why would they make a sequel to Rage? I guess it gives me an excuse to cross it off the list, but weird. I got a year to get to it. It'll be fine. God damn it. Earlier this year when I was compiling my gaming bucket list, I went through my library of games and tried to figure out what I hadn't played or what I had never finished that I could add to the list, and among those games was Rage, a first-person shooter set in a post-apocalypse brought to us by prolific first-person shooter developers id Software. I have had this game since it released in 2011, and I've never been able to get more than 1 or 2 hours into it. Not because it's hard, mind you, just because it's so nothing. Or at least I remember it being nothing. But now with Rage 2 coming out, there's really no better time for me to actually cross this one off the list and finally put it away for good, right? So the game kicks off with this cinematic to show how the world winds up in its now post-apocalyptic state. In 2029, a massive asteroid collides with the Earth, destroying civilization and transforming the world into a wasteland. With time, survivors band together to form settlements while this new world falls victim to a plague of bandit clans and mutant hordes, like every post-apocalyptic future. While all this is happening, however, our character is enjoying a nice long ice nap, cryogenically frozen in one of the various government-sanctioned ARC facilities scattered across the globe. His name is Lieutenant Nicholas Rain, apparently, though I don't ever recall hearing it mentioned, and when he finally wakes up he's set on a quest to do something. Actually, the protagonist's motivations are unclear to say the least. From the outset, you're put to work running errands for the various leaders of the wasteland, starting with Dan Hagar, the man who saved your life upon exiting the Ark. Fun fact, Dan Hagar is actually voiced by John Goodman. This concludes the only really memorable element of Rage: one single, high-profile voice actor. Anyway, Hagar sends you to deal with one of the wasteland's various bandit clans, the Ghosts, which he reckons you're capable of taking care of single-handedly, despite your first encounter with those pasty fuckers going, well, poorly. The reason he gives is that Ark survivors possess some kind of special talents, gained through pre-hibernation nanotrite injections, and yes, those are his words. What these special talents are exactly escapes me. In gameplay terms, the player character is entirely underwhelming. You haven't got any special powers to speak of, and your ability to shoot a gun is about as average as they come. And on that note, boy is Rage's gunplay not satisfying in the least. Most enemies are bullet sponges who only get more bullet spongy as the game progresses, and aiming just feels kinda clunky and imprecise. You do get your hands on a nice assortment of weapons along your journey, but most of them are just sorta bland. A pistol, a shotgun, a sniper rifle, a crossbow, 2 flavors of assault rifle, a rocket launcher, and eventually a pulse rifle that actually kicks a ton of ass. For the most part, these work about as well as you'd expect them to, though they are upgradable and they do allow you to use various ammo types to varying effect. But when most enemies just soak up damage when you're using the standard ammo, it gets kinda tiresome, you know? You also get a handful of different secondary weapons as time goes on, but aside from the satisfyingly deadly wing sticks that auto-track your enemies to some degree, they're all just kinda underwhelming. So par for the course so far. As weird and unsatisfying as combat in Rage is, you do get a little bit of help from time to time, as is demonstrated when you promptly get your ass kicked, hanged, and gutted by the Ghosts in short order. These special talents are proving useful, clearly. It's about now that the actual only useful talent that the player character has kicks in, his Ark-installed defibrillator. When your health hits 0, you're presented with this little mini-game. Match the positions on screen with the analog sticks and hit the triggers. Simple. You get to stand back up while your defibrillator blasts those in your personal space with electricity, shocking them and opening them up to some quick, lead-based retribution. It's pretty straightforward, but it's a cool idea. Also, having this saving grace in your back pocket is essential because the game rarely, if ever, actually autosaves. Generous checkpointing was fairly common back in 2011, so I have no idea what the fuck happened with Rage, but here we are. Save manually, save early, save often, folks. So you wake up and clear out the Ghost Clan hideout before moving on to other settlements and other bandit clans, with much of the remaining 8-ish hours of the game following this formula. Go into town, talk to a settler, go back out into the wasteland, and usually into one of the clan hideouts that exist as a separate stage from the open world. As a gameplay loop, it's perfectly functional, but you really aren't given much in terms of narrative to get invested in. Every mission is about taking care of a different threat to the peaceful settlements, or going out to find random settlers who have gone missing, or something equally unremarkable. Our character barely functions as a character. He has no motivations or goals of his own, and that doesn't help when Rage's errand-running gameplay loop wears thin, which is very, very quickly. shit, this is exactly why I couldn't get into Rage. It's just so bland. The gunplay and driving are functional, but they're not fun by any means, and the story's lacking as well. For 2/3 of the game, you're just running errands for these settlements until you learn about the Authority and the Rebellion working against them. These two generic factions warring over this wasteland of boring fucking people. And yes, those are the generic titles that the game gives its factions, the Authority and the Rebellion. Because Rage is functional, but it's not much more than that. Don't get me wrong, there are some variations to Rage's core gameplay. The game's open world isn't called the Wasteland for nothing, and there really isn't much to do between settlement hubs where you get missions and resources, and the missions themselves, beyond driving the game's various vehicles. But just like the majority of Rage's combat, its driving is underwhelming if functional. There aren't many vehicles on hand, and while you can customize them to some degree, I'd be lying if I said this feature was extensive. But they are relatively fun to control, whether you're driving to your mission or partaking in races at the game's larger settlements. These races are probably the most fun to be had with the game, though they're a little on the easy side. All you need to do is hold down the boost and drive over as many boost refills as you can, and you're practically guaranteed the win. Weapon races are far more interesting, and vehicular combat on the whole is pretty entertaining if simple. Weapons lock on automatically, and most enemy vehicles can't take much in the way of sustained fire. It's a nice diversion, but it wears thin pretty quickly, much like the rest of the game. Consistency is important, kids. Maybe I'm being too harsh on the game. It does have some redeeming qualities after all. Graphically it's not bad looking, it's just not overly interesting. It's very brown, grey and dark, and there is some pretty intense texture poppin', but there is definitely one element of Rage's visuals that will always impress me, at least a little bit, and that's its animations. Not all of them, mind you, but the way its melee-focused enemies animate as they rush you down and interact with your incoming shots in the environment is always really cool looking and surprising, even to this day. But when all I find memorable about a game is one aspect of its animations, a single noteworthy voice actor, and a single weapon that you don't get until 30 minutes before the credits roll, well, it just isn't a very good game, is it? Anyway, you work with the Rebellion, gathering ARC information and technology, and breaking Authority captives out of prison before launching a final assault on Capital Prime, yet another generic name for this incredibly forgettable story. Rage never ceases to amaze me, and I mean that in the worst possible sense. To the game's credit, it does at least give you a severely OP pulse rifle for this final assault, and it does not disappoint. This thing tears through heavily armored Authority soldiers like a hot knife through butter, and its alternate fire, labeled the BFG, certainly lives up to its namesake, exploding handfuls of enemies at once. But there's really no big challenge to overcome, no big boss standing between you and the end of the game. In fact, there's only one proper boss fight in the entire game, which comes surprisingly early on. You get to fight this absolutely massive mutant using a guided rocket launcher to hit its weak spots, and though it's pretty easy, it's definitely one of the game's few spectacles. There are mini-bosses too, I guess, but they hardly count. But Rage's finale? Lackluster in comparison. You fight off waves of mutants that rush you down while you push a series of buttons, and what the hell was that? I guess you activate the remaining arcs of the world, upsetting whatever plans the Authority had for them, and then credits. That's really how this game ends. I genuinely don't recall the last time I played a game so thoroughly bland from start to finish. Rage has one or two things worth mentioning, but while it's functional, it's hardly fun, and its story is so much nothing that it doesn't surprise me that I've never been able to get more than 1 or 2 hours into it previously. I had to literally sit down and force myself to play this for this video. And it sucked. It's terrible. But it's done. I never have to touch this piece of shit again. And just in time for the sequel too, which, if I'm being honest, looks like it found all the personality that this grey, brown, dark wasteland of a game was lacking. So hey, that might be good. A man can hope. But now that it's over, what did you guys think of Rage? Have you played it before? Do you like it? Are you fucking weird? It's fine if you are. We don't judge here. Either way, let me know in the comments below, and be sure to leave suggestions for more gaming bucket list entries. In the meantime, I can cross Rage off that list, and I will see you next time. Peace!